the Indian Union Debate Forum, the first debate, the proposition is, this House will abrogate Article 370 of the Constitution of India. 3 speakers will speak for the motion and 3 against. The 3 who will speak for the motion are Dr. Subramaniam Swamy. He is an eminent economist and a former cabinet minister. He was the president of the Janata Party. He merged his party with the Bharatiya Janata Party in 2013. Mr. Swamy has served as a member of the Planning Commission of India and Cabinet Minister of India. Mr. Swamy was appointed as the chairman of the Commission on Labour Standards and International Trade by then Prime Minister Mr. Narasimha Rao. It was unique because an opposition member was given a cabinet rank post by the ruling party. Welcome, sir. The second speaker to speak in favor of the motion is Siddharth Tyagarajan. He is an associate, editorial and research at Dizanshira and Associates in New Delhi. He holds an MA in International Relations from the University of Exeter, United Kingdom. The University of Exeter Debating Society declared him the best international speaker. He was also awarded honorary lifetime membership to the society, a privilege that is usually reserved for British members of parliament. Welcome, Siddharth. The third speaker who will present the proposition is Abhishek Sanskritik. Abhishek is a 22-year-old final-year law student and debate trainer from Symbiosis Law School, Pune. He has been an avid debater at college level, and his notable achievements include winning the Indian National Bar Association debate and chairing the finals of RVCE, which is Bangalore's parliamentary debate. Welcome. Those who will be opposing the proposition are Mr. Jethmalani. He is one of India's most celebrated lawyers. He has been a member of parliament for 38 years. However, he prefers, I believe, to identify himself as a teacher of law. He is also the chairman of the Kashmir Committee, which has been striving to solve the Kashmir problem by creating effective dialogue between key stakeholders in the region and the government. He is also the founder of the Sunday Guardian. Welcome, Mr. Jethmalani. Ms. Madhu Purnima Kishwar is a professor at the Center for Studies of Developing Societies and director of the Center's Indic Studies project. She is also the founder of Manushi, a journal about women and society, and Manushi Sangathan, an organization working for democratic reforms that promote gender and social justice. Welcome, Ms. Kishwar. Finally, opposing the motion will be Mr. Manish Tiwari. He is a former Union Minister of State Independent Charge. He was the Minister for Information and Broadcasting as a Member of Parliament from Ludhiana. He is a lawyer by qualification and has practiced in the Supreme Court of India as well as Delhi's High Court. He has also held the position of Secretary to the All India Congress Committee in 2004 and was appointed as its spokesperson in 2008. Welcome, Mr. Tiwari. Before I call upon the first speaker to propose the motion, I would request all speakers to adhere to the time limit of 10 minutes. I will give a warning shout call at 9 minutes and will be forced to interrupt after the end of the 10th. So with that, can I please call upon the first speaker to speak in favor of the proposition, the proposition being, this House will abrogate Article 370 of the Constitution of India. Mr. Swamy.
Thank you. First of all, I'll start by saying this is a debate rigged in favor of opposing the motion. Because all the eminent people are here, and we're all young people here. I begin by saying that we have a hallowed principle called equality before the law. And Article 370 is an abrogation of that. It was introduced as a temporary measure. And the Constitution has an extraordinary article called Article 370, which title is Temporary Provision for the State of Jammu and Kashmir, and does not require the vote of Parliament to abrogate it. The amending power under Article 368 specifies the method by which a constitutional article can be deleted. But there's an exception made for Article 370 because it was perceived as something which is going to last a very short time. It was introduced at the urging of Jawaharlal Nehru. It was not a part of the conditions under which Jammu Kashmir merged into India. Jammu Kashmir merged into India when the king signed the instrument of accession, like 500 other kings who signed the instrument of accession to merge into India. And the instrument of accession had no clause for any special provisions like Article 370. And furthermore, the instrument of accession, as it was originally formulated in the 1935 Constitution, did not require the king to ask the permission of the people or take a plebiscite of the people in order to merge. And finally, once he signs, it became final, irrevocable, and it could not be demerged. No question of any demerger. On that principle, it was merged. But Jawaharlal Nehru, very often, he never listened to anybody, but occasionally he listened to Edwin Mountbatten, and on that basis, he went to the United Nations. And he said that till this United Nations matter is over, it will be over very shortly, this should be introduced, and it was brought in the late 1949, before, almost just before the Constituent Assembly concluded its provisions. Ambedkar, who was piloting all the bills, declined to move the bill, or the amendment. He said, I am not a traitor. I will not move this. So Sardar Patel was requested by Nehru that I have to suddenly go to London. He said for the Commonwealth meeting, but I know what he went for, and I won't state it here. And he said that please do something about it. So Sardar Patel asked Gopal Swami Iyengar to move it. And after a huge uproarious debate, it was admitted, repeatedly stated, it is temporary, it will go very soon. And a Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir was set up. And so Article 370 says the President by a notification can abolish Article 370 subject to the concurrence of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Now there is no Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir because in 1954 it completed its work, and having completed its work, it said that Jammu and Kashmir is an inalienable part of India, and made no reference to Article 370 in it. So consequently, by the doctrine of necessity, I would say that all that is required today for abolishing it is the presidential notification, which means a resolution of the Cabinet of India, does not require, thankfully, the vote of Mr. Manish Tiwari and his friends, who are hell-bent on stopping Parliament from functioning. So at least on this issue, you don't need Parliament at all. So consequently, I'll say that since no other state has got this condition, and that it was supposed to be temporary, more than 70 years, almost 70 years have elapsed, and therefore, the country should be integrated once again as required under Article 14. All must be equal before the law. I would say that this article should be abrogated forthwith, and the whole of India should function under one law. Thank you very much.
That was very brief, Mr. Swami. You took only 5 minutes.
I'll take the rest of his time.
I'm afraid that would be unfair. In any case, it's loaded in your favor, as he pointed out. And now, can I please call upon Mr. Jethmalani?
She had a change of heart, so she wants to.
Mr. Jethmalani will oppose the motion.
What? I'm supporting the motion, no?
Opposing.
Opposing the motion,
right.
please. Now, I'm always amused by whatever my friend says, and I'm one of his admirers. But the trouble is that he is not a lawyer, and nor has he read the documents. The Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir was not framed by the Constituent Assembly of India. It was framed by a separate Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, which did its work from 1951 to 1956 and completed it.
54.
And no. It completed its work in 1956, and the Constitution came into force in 1957. Now, please read the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. In the last chapter, I'm sorry I can't give you the number of the article in the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution. It is that Constituent Assembly which has adopted Article 370, and it becomes now a matter totally beyond the power of Indian Parliament or any executive authority in India to tinker with it, because the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir has accepted Article 370, and I'm very happy that it has so happened, and we must all support the existence of this 370. It is now a totally irremovable portion of the Constitution of India by reason of its adoption expressly in a saving article in the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution, which is beyond the amending power of Parliament at all. So please, this article should not go, and this article serves a great purpose. It does not allow anybody to tinker with the kind of relationship that has been voluntarily established by the Jammu and Kashmir Constituent Assembly, so that today India is not to be treated as some kind of an occupying power. And I am surprised that the whole of the Indian government today or the last one which the recent government has displaced, both of them are so ignorant that they exactly don't know how to even talk to Pakistan about this problem. Thank you.
That was even briefer, just under 3 minutes. Now I'd like to call upon the third speaker, Siddharth Tyagarajan. He will speak in favor of the proposition.
Mr. Chairman, if we take less than 10 minutes, then give us credit sometime when we need more time.
Yes, we will do that for sure.
So, with the prior permission. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that I'm in this esteemed company, and that's probably the nicest I'm going to be during this speech, right? Like, I don't really think this esteemed company has done justice, particularly from side opposition, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to flag out arguments that I'm going to make, and like this entire notion of Kashmir and Article 370 and why it essentially needs to go. One, I'm going to talk to you about the issue of securitization and how Kashmir is becoming an issue that's highly securitized, and this is a problem for the people of Kashmir. And it's kind of like really, really sad that we haven't really heard anything about the people of Kashmir so far, but we've heard a lot about the legality of Article 370. I thought the purpose of Article 370 was to serve the interests of the Kashmiri people, and that is a problem that we need to address today. Second, I'm going to talk to you about the idea of policy inertia and policy paralysis, right? And how that leads to a development vacuum, and that's the problem that Kashmir Valley suffers from today, and this is a problem that we need to address, and that is something that Article 370 stands in the way of. We tell you this in terms of the analysis that I'm going to build on. 3, I'm going to talk to you about exclusionary property rights and why that's extremely problematic in any zone that is contested, and how that leads to perpetual, perpetuation of that conflict and doesn't really create any development. And last, I'm going to talk to you about the idea of Kashmir as a state versus the Indian Union, and how we need to remove the versus the Indian Union and need to take the Kashmiri people into confidence, and how Article 370 again acts as an impediment to that. But before that, certain rebuttals to our esteemed opposition on that side, right? So what did Mr. Jethmalani say? And I really do believe that he's read a lot about the Constitution. I'm not going to get into the legality of it at all. I'm not a law student, and I'm glad I'm not, because I can see what it's about, right? So one, he continues to say that it's beyond the power of someone to like repeal Article 370 or abrogate Article 370. But that's not why we've gathered here today. Because it's not about whether it can be done. It's about whether it should be done, right? And that is an issue that they need to necessarily defend. It's not enough for them to get away on technical legalities, which lawyers tend to do very often, saying it can't be done, it's in law, and thus we shouldn't really do it. This debate today is about whether it should be done, and we tell you why it should be done. One, in terms of temporal constraints, something that our first speaker really eloquently spoke about, right? The idea of how it should have been a temporary policy, but it didn't really go away. We tell you that any time you place a temporal constraint on any particular policy, that policy stops being relevant. As soon as that policy stops being relevant, it stops serving its purpose for which it was created. At that point of time, it was created because the people of Kashmir had a deep apprehension of joining the Indian Union and whether their interests would be taken care of. In the last 60 years, we might have done a lot of bad things, but we need to build that confidence, and Article 370 needs to go to build that confidence. And this is where I'm going to build into my arguments in terms of the issue of securitization, right? So why do we say that it's really, really important for Article 370 to go? So far, Article 370 says that we give them autonomous status. They do deal with a bunch of things that they need to deal with on their own terms without much interference from the center. And I'm being reductionist here, but that's pretty much the gist of Article 370, right? We tell you what is the problem with that. The idea is, I do recognize that Pakistan is a problem. I do recognize that separatism is a problem in Kashmir Valley. All of these are problems. But what is the larger problem here? The larger problem is issues such as the Armed Forces Special Powers Act that the people of Kashmir hate. Why do they hate the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and why did it get implemented in Kashmir in the first place? And this is the causal link that they need to defend today, right? We tell you that the reason that it got implemented is because of securitization of the Kashmir issue. The central government said, listen, we gave you enough autonomous powers. We told you to deal with it on your own terms. You couldn't really deal with it, and thus we're going to step in and impose certain acts because you can't clean up your own mess. We tell you, regardless of whether it's the BJP or the Congress, all these parties sometimes mess up, and that is the essential problem. It becomes this entire notion of the center having an excuse to say that state parties in Kashmir couldn't really deal with their problem, despite them having the right to, having the power to deal with that problem. And that's where acts such as AFSPA get introduced. What is the secondary level of analysis within this? We tell you the secondary problem with acts such as AFSPA is the fact that when the state securitizes such issues, when it gives the tag of national security to certain issues and imposes certain policies, it automatically reduces the power of people to question that policy, because that is the only thing that you can't really question. That's when you can be shut down. That's when dissent doesn't really need to exist, right? Because you say it's under the garb of national security. We tell you it becomes extremely easy to avoid scrutiny, and this is the kind of scrutiny that hasn't gone in Kashmir Valley, and we tell you that Article 370 is the freaking reason, and get rid of it, right? We tell you the next thing in terms of the policy inertia and the policy paralysis, and this is where it's really, really important. What has happened in Kashmir? For a very large time, people weren't allowed to own land within Kashmir. And what is owning land? Let's think about it, right? It's the basis of the capitalist system, right? And that's how development has happened. Property rights and people allowed to own land creates enterprises. Enterprises bring about development, which is what creates a conducive environment for more enterprises to come in. We tell you, in terms of this, there is a development vacuum that Article 370 has created, because there's a huge, huge impediment that corporations or private individuals face in terms of investing within Kashmir, because guess what? There is Article 370 that stops them from investing within Kashmir, and we think that is a humongous problem in terms of building investor confidence, in terms of building confidence within the valley, and in terms of taking those people into confidence. We tell you this kind of policy inertia is what got us into this state with Kashmir, where people don't really know what's happening. What we hear about again and again in Kashmir, and this is, I think, a slight problem with the media also, is there are protests about we want to separate from India. But guess what? The youth often also protests in Kashmir for unemployment, for wage hikes, for the absence of jobs, etc. We think all of these are issues that don't get adequate attention, but are issues that Kashmiri people have. And removing Article 370 will ensure, and ease of access to opportunities. And we think economic development is something that automatically reduces the scope of conflict in many conflict-ridden areas. It creates a sense of empowerment within people where they feel that they have the agency to change things because they have the political and social capital to change things. And we think that's really, really important. The third thing, in terms of exclusionary property rights, right? We tell you, Mr. Speaker, that exclusionary property rights generally don't really tend to lead to very good results, right? I'll mention a few examples, if you may allow me to do so. The idea of Palestine, for instance, how people were evicted and not allowed to come back. Imagine the sense of hatred that you foster in terms of people not being allowed to enjoy their ancestral connections to their land, or the idea of these people not really having access to livelihood and being shunned out of the land that they called their home. We tell you exclusionary property rights tends to create a resentment within people that does not really go away with generations to come. In fact, that resentment keeps building because it builds through oral histories, right? People keep telling you that this is how we were kicked out. This is what happened to us. And that gets ingrained as the prominent narrative within these people. That prominent narrative tends to permeate down to other people that start believing it. So, look at a generation of Kashmiri Pandits that think that the state has wronged them. And why is it? It's Article 370 again. We think removing it will be a step in the right direction. I'm not saying it's going to remove that prejudice completely, but will at least be a step in the right direction, and that's where we ought to head. Other than that, we tell you, Mr. Speaker, this entire notion of the idea of the Kashmiri Union versus the Indian Union. Why is it important for us to remove the idea of the verses here? So far, the Kashmiri people have not really felt at par with the Indian Union, despite them having exclusionary autonomous status. Why is this? I'm going to talk about this on 3 levels. One is the idea of people in general around India feeling that Kashmir is probably just lazy. It's a very Donald Trump-esque logic about it, but that's what happens. Also, this entire hatred is something that fosters more hatred towards the Kashmiri people, and it creates this versus aspect, and we don't really think that's a good idea. With this, we're extremely, extremely proud to propose this motion, and we hope that they engage with us more about why it should or shouldn't be there instead of it just can't go. Because if that's the case, then it's redundant for us to argue. And other than that, I really want to say this, I don't really think the odds are skewed in their favor after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siddharth. Could I please call upon our next speaker, Madhu Purnimakishwar, who will oppose the motion.
Before I start on the subject, I'd like to clarify that I find this whole debating format, for versus against, absolutely stupid, idiotic. And even at age 19, when I was President Miranda House, the first thing I did was to abolish the debating society and instead created a discussion forum. No problem on earth, leave alone a complex one like this, can ever be solved if you take simplistic for versus against position. Even a domestic dispute can't be solved like that. You have to be able to explore nuances on both sides and shades of gray in order to arrive at a sensible conclusion and be able to be flexible enough to respond to changing situation. Now, I fully, before I start, though I'm supposed to be on that side of the fence, but I fully agree with my friend Subramaniam Swamy that Article 370 and the attendant promise of plebiscite that Nehru made to the UN arbitrarily, unilaterally, without any need to do so, was a self-inflicted wound on India by Jawaharlal Nehru. It was one of the stupidest things, but Nehru is known for too many stupid things. He's responsible for so many blunders that historians are actually afraid to write an honest history of that period because we would die of shame that here's this man we think is our Bharat Ratna, but he committed blunders after blunders. Now, at the time of accession, in 1947, as you well know, the choice was for the princely states Wherever there's a Muslim majority population, it was expected to go to Pakistan, and Hindu majority was supposed to go to India. And where the ruler was, let's say in this case, Muslim majority state, but Hindu ruler, then a different kind of arrangements had to be made. This Article 370 and the problems attendant to it came into being not because Kashmiri Muslims demanded any special rights at that point in time. In fact, when the Pakistani invaders came, it was Kashmiri Muslims who drove them away and determinedly helped the Indian army. It was the Maharaja Hari Singh who created the trouble because he wanted to retain his independence. And he asked and he begged for India's intervention only when Pakistan sent the armed raiders to occupy J&K. That's when he begged India for protection. At that time, India could have dictated its own terms because the Maharaja was very vulnerable. But instead, Nehru not only stopped the Indian army from occupying the whole territory. Mind you, a large part of the territory is today under not just Pak control, but China. It's also been gifted to China. That's when the instrument of accession gets to be signed, and the instrument of accession gives de jure possession to India over the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir as it existed in 1947, August 1947. Now, Nehru goes not only to UN to say we will do plebiscite, he was really a narcissist and enjoyed playing these very funny games to appear as a world leader. Interestingly, Jinnah resisted and opposed it for 14 days. It's only on 15th day that Jinnah accepted and agreed to this whole demand for, may I have the water please, for plebiscite. Now, there again, Nehru unilaterally offers, and of course Mountbatten is there to create a lot more mischief than was necessary. And the Article 370 gets inserted, indeed, as Dr. Swami said, as a temporary clause. And he's also right that Baba Sahib Ambedkar was outraged and he refused to move the motion. Even so, having said that, why do I think abrogation is today a non-issue? And in that sense, it's flogging a dead horse. Firstly, the legal point to which Mr. Jethmalani has already hinted. Unlike all other princely states, which signed two instruments, one, the instrument of accession, and second, the instrument of merger. Through instrument of merger, they surrendered all their powers. By contrast, Kashmir was, for reasons inexplicable, made to sign only instrument of accession, whereby it surrendered 3 areas to India, to the Union of India: external affairs, defense, communication, while retaining internal autonomy. And Mr. Jethmalani is right in saying that in our constitution is embedded the Article 2 of the Constitution along with 370, not Article, Clause 2 of 370, not just the J&K Constituent Assembly, but even our own Constitution, Clause 2 of Article 370 says that its abrogation has to be decided by the J&K Constituent Assembly. It was absolutely needless, gratuitous, but Nehru pushed it through, and we are saddled with that unhappy legacy. And therefore, since the Constitution of J&K says that all of India's constitution doesn't automatically apply to us, it's up to us to decide which part of Indian constitution to accept or not accept, the power of amendment, Article 368, does not apply to J&K. So therefore, today, Kashmir's merger with India, union with India, is based on Article 370. The moment you abrogate it, you create a really serious constitutional crisis, and it can create a real, even political, international embarrassment for India. They could go to International Court of Law and challenge it, etc. Now, the point here that's more important is not only that we will be creating a constitutional crisis by trying to abrogate it, because J&K Assembly, by the way, in 1954, before the Constituent Assembly of J&K dissolved itself, it did pass a resolution that it will not abrogate Article 370. They did pass that resolution before they dissolved themselves. So that's another thing. They could at that time have been persuaded to say, hell with Article 370, but they didn't do so. But the more important reason, the practical reason why abrogation is needless is that, unfortunately though, Kashmiri Muslims have made it an identity prop and a prestige issue. And you know how it is with identity issues, ego issues. People take a stupid stand and they get stuck on it. The more you challenge, the more cussed they become. So when people are in that cussed mode, it's like, for example, Sikhs. Never, the gurus, the early gurus never wore a turban or had long hair. It was not part of it. It's only during Sri Guru Gobind Singh's time that this became part of it. Even so, till early 20th century, families used to have one Hindu son, one Mona son, and one Keshdhari son, and give it to the gurus. There was really no difference. It's only when Arya Samaj started saying Sikhs are abhransh Hindus, we must do Shuddhi, bring them back. They said, नहीं नहीं हम हिंदू नहीं हैं. और हम हिंदू नहीं करते करते खालिस्तानी पॉलिटिक्स तक पहुंच गए. जब कोई किसी भी बात पे आइडेंटिटी इशू बना ले, अब देखिए अब मुसलमानों ने बीफ ईटिंग बना लिया. कहीं इस्लाम में नहीं लिखा कि बीफ खाना बहुत ज़रूरी है. But it has become because we are needlessly creating pangas around it. So I say, don't tamper with identity issues. Most importantly, Article 370 is today an empty shell. In fact, the Home Minister Gulzari Lal Nanda, way back in the 60s, had said, Article 370 has acted as a tunnel through which the Indian government has actually ferreted out all that it... I'm taking 3 minutes of Swami's time
That will
also.
not be allowed.
Okay. It's an empty, this thing. From 1956 to 1994, 47 presidential orders have been issued, and many of the laws of India have been extended, and 94 of the 97 subjects in the union list of our constitution have also been extended to J&K. So actually it's been eroded beyond recognition. There's very little left to it. It's just an empty shell, and it has done Kashmiris no good, but it's not doing India any harm. We've been able to impose governor's rule, we've been able to dismiss governments, we've been able to do almost everything we wanted. I had a whole list of things I don't have time to. Now, the more important thing, I think India has played its game very poorly.
That's the end of your 10 minutes, ma'am.
1 minute, please.
Okay, 40 seconds.
1947, at the time of accession, the entire territory of J&K was de jure under India's control. It was illegally occupied by Pakistani forces. We've never had the guts to say, we claim our right there. We passed a resolution in Parliament, but now we'd be only too grateful if Pakistan would agree to line of control. We've never even dared do that. More importantly, the land acquisition, you talk about development vacuum, actually it's a non-issue for the simple reason, I'll end with this. The Ijazatnama rules enacted during Hari Singh's reign state that anyone who has lived in J&K for over 10 years can become a state subject. And more importantly, Section 140 of the Transfer of Property Act, as amended in 1975, allows acquisition of land for industry, for charities, for hospitals, for colleges, for anything you want. So it's not true that you can't invest, you can't buy land, you can do so. It's just that there have been other reasons. Terrorism, park-backed terrorism,
Thank you,
and Congress
Ms.
Party and National
Ishwar.
Conference has really messed up the politics of Kashmir. Enough. They've never allowed Kashmiris to settle down. They have, and National Conference in particular, last sentence.
Okay.
And you know, it's political mess. It's not Article 370. Leave it alone, fix your politics, and things will be all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kishwar. And whether it's a debate for and against or a dialogue, the fundamental for any conversation is equality for all on time. I'd like to call our last speaker who proposes the motion, Abhishek Sanskritik. Abhishek, your time starts now.
Thank you. So I'd like to start with a little bit of house cleaning, as I like to call it, before speaking about the arguments from the other side. So I'd like to start with Mr. Jethmalani, who, by the way, is my professor emeritus from college, so it feels odd to be arguing against my own professor. But he said that there's a problem against occupying powers. You know, India shouldn't become an occupying power. But we didn't have that problem when we took over Hyderabad, Mysore, and every other princely state that the Iron Man decided should become a part of India. No, that wasn't a problem then. We don't have special Article 370, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5 for every princely state. Otherwise, we'd be the United Kingdom of India, Jammu and Kashmir, Hyderabad, Mysore, and all the other princely states that we probably took over. We'd be like the UK, a colonial hangover which never got over. The second problem is that you say that Article 370 cannot be abrogated, and then our esteemed second speaker from the opposition comes and says, no, you can. Article 370, Part 2, which needs to be taken, you need to take permission from the Constituent Assembly themselves. So it leaves you to wonder, will they ever give up this power, and why would they not give it up? And she puts it in very succinctly, right? It's an empty shell of what it used to be. It's been eroded beyond existence, and it's merely an ego issue. So what I'm going to do over here as the final speaker from proposition is give you a ground reality checks on how Article 370 actually works on a day-to-day basis, right? So what does 370 give Kashmir? It gives them autonomy. Sure, it gives them the ability to say that we will pass our own acts. So we don't want your Land Acquisition Act. We want to have a Ranbir Penal Code instead of the Indian Penal Code. And we'd like to, you know, keep the Jammu and Kashmir RTI and a different TOPA instead of taking on your own acts. But they will take 300 legislations which are passed by the central government through presidential orders and accept them. So quite frankly, the only things they're doing is changing 15 to 20 legislations and keeping everything else. The second thing, and this is when, you know, someone in the BJP goes and says that the Article 370 issue should be discussed. Omar Abdullah tweets at once, and the important part is either J&K will not be a part of India or Article 370 will exist. So we don't see why a power of autonomy which is given to them to allow them to have certain acts not passed and to be passed in their country, allows them a secessionist view and allows Omar Abdullah to make tweets that act as if, you know, Jammu and Kashmir is his family's estate which he can partition whenever he feels like. The second issue is exactly how dependent is Kashmir, to like put some veracity on Omar Abdullah's claims. So for every rupee that Kashmir spends, the Indian central government gives 60 paise of it. If an Indian person in 2001 was being supported by the government, got 1,137 rupees, the equivalent Kashmiri citizen, and I'll explain to you why I'm calling them Kashmiri citizens, gets 8,092 rupees. That is 8 times the amount an Indian citizen gets. We're literally paying out of our teeth to make sure Kashmir stays with us. It's sort of like an empty threat if you think about it, though. They don't have the financial sufficiency to go about and split apart, right? It's like that kid saying, "Main ghar se bhag jaunga," and the parents like, "Haan, bhag, koi nahi, let's see." The second thing that we need to talk about, so the only sticking point really is that these property issues. So I, as an Indian citizen, cannot personally purchase land. I can never become a Kashmiri resident, so to speak. And it's odd that ma'am over here was defending these property issues because till 2002, they didn't allow women to continue buying land once they were married out of Kashmir. Then they had to, the J&K High Court had to go ahead and say, no, that's not allowed. And Omar Abdullah's government immediately in 2004 went and tried to pass a bill saying that, no, there is a disqualification once again, and married women cannot be allowed to own property once they're married off. So it's sort of like a Parsi colony where you're not allowed to buy property if anyone's from Bombay. But the bigger problem and the isolation factor, which I see as a cost over here, it's sort of like ghettoization. So the reason why blacks and whites had such a big problem in the United States of America to recreate social ties after years of slavery and years of oppression was because they refused to live next to each other. And if you don't live next to each other, you don't share your problems with each other, this connection or national integration, as everybody bandies around the political class, will never occur only because you don't know their real problems. The second situation is that, okay, so what is the special ground? Are there a special historical case? Like everybody's pointed out that Hari Singh decided to give up his kingdom, and therefore we're stuck with this treaty of accession. But nobody really asked what the Kashmiri people want, right? Jawaharlal Nehru did. He said that, you know, ICCPR gives you a plebiscite, right? So why don't we take it to the UN, hold a plebiscite, and see what the Kashmiri people want? We've never had that. But I do think a valid indicator would be the fact that 65% of the Kashmiri population turned up for an election in 2014. That counts for something, saying that, yes, they're okay with the government that is taking them forwards. They have a say, and they're all right with being with India. Sure, there are secessionist factions, but then do you have special rules like Article 370 for every secessionist faction, like in Nagaland where the Ulfa, or in Arunachal Pradesh, or even in Punjab? Did you start making special laws for them just so that you could deal with secessionist elements within their own country? And the second issue that you have to deal with over here is to see whether this Article 370 in fact further propagates these secessionist issues. And that is where the utility comes into check. So literally the utility is, as ma'am put out rightly, an ego issue versus the cost, one, of national integrity. Because these rules make it akin to it being a foreign country. They have their own constitution, they have their own flag. It's almost like a republic within a republic. And on top of that, it becomes like the issue of China and Taiwan, where they'll say that, no, Taiwan will say that they're a separate country, and people go around and start creating alliances, trade alliances, so on and so forth, with this separate nation in themselves. So when you can have an identification problem and you don't see yourselves as a part of the same country, you have your own flag, your own constitution, and these are very important elements of national integration. Every Indian around here, without a shadow of doubt, will say, yes, that's my national flag, that's my national anthem, will rise up. It's ingrained in us. We don't know why we stand up during a national anthem, but it just happens because of social conditioning. This social conditioning for them is that we have our different flag, we have our different constitution, we're not Indians, we're Kashmiris. The second problem then becomes this national integration. So secessionist movements can always spring from this feeling of apathy, which, as my second speaker did point out, comes from lack of development, lack of growth, lack of employment, that leaves the youth wondering, does this government really care for us? And the second issue of non-interaction, because you never meet people from India, you never have to interact with them, talk about their problems, exchange why you find it so bad to be kept in a country where you need almost like a visa to go to India, and I need a visa to almost go to Kashmir. It results in this lack of communication and a sort of diaspora where you don't want to interact with these people, and therefore you'd rather just fall into the secessionist band that, okay, you know what, Indians don't care about you. Guess what? We care about you. We will fight for your independence with guns and militancy and blood. The second, and a very, very important example which I'd like to bring about here, would be comparing the LTTE and the Sinhalese Sri Lankans that were there. The exact same situation happened. They had the Tamil Lankans were situated only on the coastline. They'd never interact with the Sinhalese. They weren't given political rights. They weren't given any sort of developmental growth. This led to a growing dissatisfaction, which led to a militant movement, and then turned out into a full-scale war. To solve the problem of Kashmir is to accept first that there is a problem. Yes, we have a problem. We have Article 370, which does not allow for an effective governance. How do we deal with this? We deal with it by removing it. We deal with it by making sure that the laws apply uniformly. We deal with it by saying that citizens can go from one part of India to another part of India, which is Kashmir, and interact with people, meet people, and create dialogue and contact. To say that there is no problem, that it's an empty shell, that, you know, this will pass over, is to just hold your hands up and say that, yes, we have poverty, but you know what, poor people will work and they'll get richer and we don't really need to do anything about it. It's not trying to do anything at all. And that makes it even worse. That's what makes
9 minutes.
That's what makes people want to become a militant. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek Sanskritik. Can I now please call upon our last speaker, Manish Tiwari, who will oppose the motion.
Mr. Chairperson, sir, when we start looking at historical evolution through the prism of our own personal biases and bitterness, we run the risk of distorting reality. And so therefore, I would not like to diminish myself by even rebutting some of the rants which have taken place. To understand Article 370 in its entirety, you need to really step back into time. When the Indian independence was under discussion, and Sir Radcliffe was invited to draw the boundaries that would create the dominions of India and Pakistan, along with the instrument of accession, there was a standstill agreement which was also drafted. The 562 princely states were given the option of either acceding to the dominion of India or acceding to the dominion of Pakistan or signing a standstill agreement with one or both of them. The state of Jammu and Kashmir at that point in time, in its wisdom, decided to sign a standstill agreement with the dominion of Pakistan and the dominion of India. And may I also point out at this point in time that if it wouldn't have been for the wisdom of some people, the district of Gurdaspur in Punjab, which was a Muslim majority district, would have really gone to Pakistan and would have effectively cut off all road communication which the dominion of India had with the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And that's why the Punjab Boundary Commission Award actually gets delayed and gets published after the 15th of August 1947, which creates its own difficulties, but we'll come to that later. Pakistan decides to then violate the standstill agreement and sends the Afradis and the other and Pakistani militia in order to invade the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The then ruler Maharaja Hari Singh, in his wisdom, decides to request the government of India for assistance, and while requesting for assistance, signs the instrument of accession. The government of India, through its Governor General Lord Louis Mountbatten, while accepting that instrument of accession, very categorically says that the future of Jammu and Kashmir will be decided with a reference to the will of the people after the state of Jammu and Kashmir has been cleared of all invaders. And for all the blame which has been laid at the door of Jawaharlal Nehru, let me remind you that the Prime Minister at that point in time was one among equals. There were other people of equal stature who were a part of that government which advised the Governor General, and that letter was written to Maharaja Hari Singh. Therefore, after that, in order to move from the instrument of accession, which only gave the right to the dominion of India over external affairs, defense, and currency, and possibly one more subject, it was decided that Article 370 would be made a part of the Indian Constitution. Article 370 was incorporated. It was sanctified by the Delhi Agreement of 1952 between the then Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Sheikh Abdullah, and the government of India, which categorically said that the relationship between the state of Jammu and Kashmir and the government of India would be governed by Article 370. Then we had the Jammu and Kashmir Constituent Assembly, which affirmed Article 370, and as Mr. Jethmalani very rightly pointed out, that without the consent of the Jammu and Kashmir Constituent Assembly, which has now ceased to exist, even in terms of Article 370 as it stands today, the government of India or the parliament does not have the right to abrogate it. We went further. In 1974, 13th of November 1974 to be precise, we decided and we reaffirmed Article 370 through the Kashmir Accord. And it is not as if Article 370 is a standalone provision in the Indian Constitution. What about Article 371? The special rights which have been granted to the state of Maharashtra, to the state of Nagaland, to various other states in the northeast. So therefore, it is not as if Article 370 is a standalone provision of in the Indian Constitution. The government of India, at different moments of time, given the complexities, nuances, and the subtleties of managing a union the size of India with all its diversity and complexity, entered into specific arrangements with different people living in different areas, enshrined them as articles of the Indian Constitution. And what would happen, ladies and gentlemen, if we decide to abrogate Article 370? Legally and constitutionally speaking, this would mean that the relationship between India and Jammu and Kashmir would revert back to the terms of the instrument of accession, which means that government of India would only have the right to make laws with regard to those three subjects: defense, external affairs, currency, and possibly one more, which have been specified in the instrument of accession. And now if you were to extrapolate the entire evolution of Article 370 in the context of India's relationship with Jammu and Kashmir, we've used Article 370 to extend the authority of the Comptroller and Auditor General, the Indian Supreme Court, the various other provisions of the Indian Constitution, which equally apply to various states across the country. So therefore, to my mind, I would like to very respectfully submit that the Article 370 debate is a complete non sequitur. Article 370 is not only an article of creed for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but it forms the constitutional cornerstone of the relationship that we chose to evolve between the government of India and Jammu and Kashmir. And I would like to conclude by saying that this is also a misnomer, that India went to the United Nations and offered a plebiscite. Nowhere in any United Nations resolutions, and I have all of them out here, is the word ever mentioned, if the word plebiscite ever mentioned in the context of a concession made by the government of India. Plebiscite, or a reference to the will of the people, was the original promise made by Lord Louis Mountbatten when he accepted the instrument of accession. And the reason why the promise of plebiscite was not fulfilled, if you read the United Nations resolution of the 21st of April 1948, it would become very clear, because the resolution clearly states that the condition precedent for the plebiscite to become operational was the withdrawal of all those irregulars by Pakistan who had occupied the territory of Jammu and Kashmir. And since that fundamental precondition or precedent was not fulfilled, so therefore the entire question of a plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir really became a non-starter. My only one submission would be, when we look at historical evolution as it has taken place, let us look at the cold facts of history as they stand, and let's not try and color them with our own biases and misconceptions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Manish Tiwari. Now we have 25 minutes to take questions from the audiences, and the two speakers who didn't use up their time, I'm sure, can use that time to say anything else they want. And I'd request the audience to identify yourself when you ask the question. I'll come to you. You could just raise your hand. Okay, we have one here.
Hello, my name is Pranav Gupta. My question is to Ms. Madhu ma'am and Manish sir. My question won't be on the ground of, it won't be on the very legal side, but I would like to ask a question on humanitarian ground. For example, we have right to equality and we have Article 21, right to life. I would like to raise this question that in Jammu and Kashmir, we have more than 12.5 million people. We have a provision in our preamble of fraternity. What about that? Why we are not trying to if the government is giving that much of stress in Jammu and Kashmir, calling them an Indian, okay, then why we are not promoting this thing, right to equality among those people? What about the people of Jammu and Kashmir? They are not being treated like the rest of the people in India are being treated. Why we are these 12 million people are not being properly employed? There is a land more than 22,000 square kilometers, and it is not being properly used for the economical purpose as well. So my only question is, what about those people, those who are not being treated as other Indians are being treated? And one more thing. And what I personally believe that we should not accuse our past. If you're looking for better suggestions, we look for the future and the present scenario. We cannot change the past. So for the better perspective, we should look into the future. Better not accuse the past. Okay, that's the thing. Thanks.
I think the one right that the Kashmiri people were denied, which is what turned them against the Indian Union, is the right to free and fair elections. Right from the start, even at the time when Sheikh Abdullah could sweep the polls because of his enormous popularity, he wouldn't let even token opposition candidates stand, and the Congress allowed rigging of elections time after time, till Kashmiri people revolted, late 80s, and since then, things have never come back. But every time when there's been a free and fair election, for example, in 1977, when Congress, Indira Gandhi lost power and Janata Party regime came in, Morarji Desai apparently, and Kashmiris, till date, if there are 2-3 people whose names from India they really honor, are Morarji Desai, because he said, I will not allow rigging. And the moment free and fair elections took place, soon after, people were singing Janagan Man in Kashmir in public, in the public meetings that were being organized. They were not hostile to India, they were hostile to rigging backed by central government. And it's actually anti-national conference sentiment, which has turned into anti-India sentiment, because the center was seen backing them. Had we given them a full dose of democracy, I don't think we would have seen this day.
Mr. Tiwari, you'd like to add something?
If I understood your question correctly, it really goes to the genesis of what is Indianness. Look, the genesis of Indianness is the instinctive desire to be in India. This is not something which can be forced onto people. You cannot compel somebody to be an Indian or an Englishman or a Frenchman if they do not want to. So therefore, under those circumstances, there is an emotional distance which the Indian state has to walk in Jammu and Kashmir. Unfortunately, there have been developments in the past, and I do not agree with what Ms. Kishwar says, primarily because if the blame has to be laid at the door of the National Conference and the Congress, then the National Conference and the Congress kept getting elected repeatedly in that state, after the instances which have been referred to. But that's not the point in contention. The point in contention is, as we look towards the future, the decision which the government of India, and when I mean by the government of India, I mean across governments needs to make, is do we want to hold territory in Jammu and Kashmir, or do we want the people? We can continue to hold the territory for as long as we want, because notwithstanding, whatever may be our deepest desires, the nuclear test of 1998, which froze the power balance in South Asia into perpetuity, is not going to allow a change of the geographical status quo in Jammu and Kashmir. The sooner we accept that reality, the better it is. And therefore, the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, Musharraf formula of 2007, make borders irrelevant, is really the way forward in the context of Jammu and Kashmir.
So therefore, I think the time has come for us to make that fundamental choice as to whether we as a state only want to hold territory or do we want to emotionally integrate the people with us.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. We'll just take the next question, ma'am, please. You've had more than your time. I must insist. And it's former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. We have a question for the proposition.
Good afternoon, President. My name is Sharad Verma. So my question is for Dr. Swami. So it's a legal question. As you suggested, the way of getting rid of Article 370 would be solely a presidential proclamation, as you said. And the requirement of a Constituent Assembly resolution, let's say it's dissolved because the Constituent Assembly does not exist. But sir, as far as I understand, we're not really concerned with the body and the dissolution of it. We are concerned with the constituent power. To say that now since the Constituent Assembly does not exist and therefore it has lost relevance would be improper, I feel, because right now our parliament is the one holding the constituent power. So constituent power shifts from the incumbents, right? So as far as I understand, if you could clarify over that. And if I may add to this, Article 368, as I understand, begins with a non-obstant clause. It is notwithstanding 370 also. So don't you think it would be, if we ever get to the situation that we get rid of 370, wouldn't it be more democratic to go through the Article 368 procedure, or is it impossible?
First of all, let me begin by saying that Mr. Jethmalani is wrong when he says that Article 370 exists in the J&K Constitution. Please ask him to name the clause at which I just been through the internet. Every clause, no reference. The only reference to the permanence of 370 arises in an agreement. I am telling you. Come on, I've seen it just now. Two, only reference ever made to the Article 370 being permanent was an agreement was only in the agreement or accord between Sheikh Abdullah and Indira Gandhi. And that is not a constitution. Maybe Manish Tiwari thinks that Indira Gandhi was the constitution and constitution was Indira Gandhi. First of all, this debate is framed, should Article 370 be abrogated? Firstly, if it can be done legally, we'll do it legally. But if it can't be done legally, then like Abraham Lincoln faced with the division of United States on constitutional principles, he said to hell with constitutional principles, sent the army and united the United States. So, is Kashmir a part of India? Of course, from centuries. All our holy shrines are in Kashmir. Is Kashmir, therefore it is our duty to integrate it fully. Now, can it be done legally? I have already said so, that the only thing that exists today is Article 370, which is titled temporary measure. From hearing the speech on the other side, it appears that they have already decided whatever the Constitution may say, it is permanent because of a variety of compulsions that they point to. No country can be bound in compulsion when it comes to the identity of a nation. We believe in equality before law, and there's a constitutional principle that has to be established in Kashmir. When 500,000 Kashmiri Pandits were driven out, saying, get out, you're not a Kashmiri, of people who have been through generations and were there even before those who claim that they are today the owners of Kashmir. Even before they came, they were there. They were driven out, and in our own country they became refugees. Therefore, Article 370 died the day Kashmiri Pandits were driven out, and therefore to rectify that situation, we have to abrogate it. And if it can be done constitutionally, we'll do it constitutionally. If they want it by some other means, well, we are ready for it. Because as in Hyderabad, when the Nizam became obstinate and the future of the country depended on Hyderabad being part of India, army was sent and taken over because of Sardar Patel and not because of Jawaharlal Nehru.
Thank you, Dr. Swami. Mr. Jethmalani, you were saying something on that.
There's an express article in the last chapter of the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution, the third clause of which article expressly mentions 370 as being adopted by the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir as a part of the Constitution.
Name the
clause. Keep that, bring the text here. Have you got a Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir?
Okay, let's take the next question. I think the audience will be able to check that in the last chapter. You say it's in the, if you could just repeat.
Yeah, I believe it is Article 141.
It's in the last chapter. Right. Okay, we'll just take the next question. Thank you.
Let's have a bet.
Okay. Okay, the wager is on, but we'll just...
If I lose dinner anywhere in India, if he loses dinner anywhere in the world.
And let's make that a Wazwan in Kashmir then.
Can't we have a better bet than a mere dinner?
We have a question here from the lady. Please identify yourself as well.
I'm Kavya. The question is for side opposition. On a cost-benefit analysis, are we giving more value to an ego-identity crisis over issues like economic development, national integration, national sentiment, unity, equality before law? So are we valuing an identity crisis over all these issues as a nation?
Who is it addressed to?
Anyone particular? Or would like anyone to take it? Any of you can take it. Since Ms. Kishwar is most keen.
Yeah, I really would like to clarify.
Yeah. And if Mr. Tiwari or Mr. Jethmalani want to add, please feel free.
No, I didn't say that because it's become an identity issue, therefore we should surrender national interest. Not at all. I'm saying there are a lot of things that can be easily done which we are not doing. For example, Hindu refugees from Pakistan occupied Kashmir. 67 years. I want to know why the Congress didn't allow them to become state subjects. The law allows it. The law allows it. Anybody who's been there for 10 years can do it. In any case, they came as refugees. They should have been. Even this has not been done. The point that I'm trying to make is that if the real genesis of the problem is repeated rigging of elections, Kashmiris will tell you they've only had 3 honest elections, 1977, 2002, and this recent one. They come out in large numbers, and more importantly, not only come out in large numbers, and when they are angry because of rigging elections, the voting percentage falls to 5%, 3%, 7%. Now, you know, it's in 60s and even exceeds sometimes the all India average. More importantly, Kashmiris have been voting with their feet, which is when the militancy broke out, those few who wanted weapons and insurgency went to Pakistan. Those who wanted education, business, jobs came to India. They have invested heavily in properties. You know, all of Lajpat Nagar, Jangpura, Malviya Nagar is full of Kashmiri Muslims. In Pune, in Bombay, in Kerala, go anywhere in India and you will see a Kashmiri business, a handicraft shop. There's not a place in India where you wouldn't find any corner of India. So they're really voting with their feet if they really hated India. Nobody goes to the belly of the monster. You know, nobody has sent their children to Pakistan for education.
Would Mr. Tiwari,
they send them to.
Would Mr. Tiwari or Mr. Jethmalani
to say that they are estranged, that they don't wish to be, it's just political mismanagement, mischief that has been played, and if only these parties would.
Mr. Tiwari would like to add.
It's not a cost-benefit analysis. The fact is that constitutionally, it cannot be done, and it should not be done. Article 370, for whatever it is worth, provides the cornerstone of the relationship that we've evolved with Jammu and Kashmir. Under Article 370, we have been able to adapt all those provisions of the Indian Constitution which are germane to providing equality before law or the other fundamental rights which are enshrined in the Constitution, So why do we want to fix a situation which is not broken? Article 370 has not really broken down. And thus, this debate becomes non sequitur. And if you extrapolate it from there, then somebody will start tomorrow saying, please review the special relationship which you have with Nagaland. Nagaland is the only state where the state or the people have control over the resources beneath the ground. The Constitution of India actually provides that the control of all resources underneath the ground actually vests in the Union of India. It does not vest either in the people or the state. But the special provision we're dealing with Nagaland provides that. So tomorrow you will say revisit that also. Then you will say revisit the special status which has been given to Vidarbha or the other regions in terms of Article 371A of the Constitution. So therefore, why are we trying to really fix something which is not broken?
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. We have a question for the proposition. Let's take that question and then you can add whatever.
He started off by saying constitutionally it cannot be done. Like it's a very simple hypothetical to side opposition, right? If there is a referendum on removing Article 370 right now in Kashmir, and assuming that, like, say 70% of the people say remove it, like, are they okay with removing it then, or are they still going to say constitutionally it still can't be done? Because that's what it seems to be right now.
Right.
That it can't.
Mr. Tiwari, could you have a brief answer to that?
May I just respond to that? That's a very dangerous argument to make. Because the moment you make that argument, the counter argument would be, if you are ready for a referendum on Article 370, why are you not ready for a referendum or a plebiscite that Jammu and Kashmir should stay with India or go to Pakistan or become independent? That's a very dangerous argument to make.
Right. Can we just have one question for Mr. Swami, because he's hardly spoken. Then you can add in after that, if you don't mind.
स्वामी सर, मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ, जब 370 आर्टिकल के बारे में बात करते हैं तो सिर्फ कश्मीर का मांग होता है, ठीक है? जम्मू के साथ कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होता, जैसे कि बीजेपी अभी अपने
लद्दाख के साथ भी नहीं। जम्मू और लद्दाख तो समस्या है ही नहीं, परंतु ये कांग्रेस के ज़माने से प्राथमिकता दी जाती है सेक्युलरिज्म के लिए, इसके माने जिससे मुसलमान
Can you just finish his question, then you can take over?
All right, what is his question?
Sir,
so if he speaks in Hindi, I'll have to interrupt him, no? Okay, I'll translate. Acha, if he can't speak English, no problem.
No, I don't have any problem in English. I just want to focus.
Yeah, you speak in English, because that's been how the thing has been conducted.
Sir, when we talk about Article 370, then all our people are focusing, we want Kashmir. Kashmir, where is Jammu? This means you are not going in a secular way, dealing this problem. If you capture by amending or removing this Article 370, can you stop Kashmiri militants? Can you stop? I don't think so. You can never stop until and unless you get the sentiment of people over there. So,
all that is agreed about sentiment and so on. The issue is, first of all, let us decide that we want to get the whole of Kashmir as an integral part and an equal part of India. Now, I don't go into this question that if I have to cure cancer, I must first cure my flu or something like that, which is what Manish Tiwari is saying. First, look at Nagaland and so on. These are all under control. I'll look after it afterwards. This is a major problem because it's a source of our terrorism in our country. So we've got to solve that problem. I have no difficulty in saying that Kashmir can never be separated from India, the part that we have today, because of the army. Second, I would also say that the part that is not with us but with Pakistan is also to be recovered, because Parliament passed a resolution in 1994 by the then Prime Ministers moving it, namely Narasimha Rao. I don't know whether Manish Tiwari will own up to him because his leader has disowned him, wouldn't let his dead body also come to the AICC. So therefore, they may not have owned Narasimha Rao today. But the fact is that Parliament unanimously passed that resolution that we will not rest till the whole of Kashmir, including the part in possession of Pakistan, is restored to India. So we are committed that way. And so the question of Jammu and Ladakh, yes, since they are not creating any problems, so we are not paying attention to you. If you want the attention to be paid, you create problems and say we also want to go to Pakistan, then we will look after you.
Thank you.
issue is that.
Thank you. And Abhishek, like to add something before we take the next question?
So those,
it's on.
My two only issues were, number one, when everybody talks about it can't be done, it constitutionally can be done. 370 Part 2 says yes, if you pass an amendment in the parliament, all you need is the Constituent Assembly of Kashmir to say yes, it's all right. So it's basically up to whether Omar Abdullah wants to give up his personal fiefdom or not. And the second issue with this correlation with Nagaland and so on is again very odd, because Nagaland has been given special protection only to tribal areas. So this would then mean that Kashmiris are tribal areas and we want to protect their land rights only because we want to save their culture. However, 370 doesn't seem to give that sort of demarcation or delineation. So to compare the two would be to like compare peas and potatoes.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for the opposition.
A very good afternoon to the entire house. So I'm Anubhav and I'm an economics student. My question would be to Mr. Manish Tiwari. Sir, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I gathered from your speech was your end that you're trying to achieve is that both the systems should have political, peaceful existence, wherein both the systems and both the entities are allowed to coexist peacefully. But given the fact that we are actually reduced to such a day wherein we are discussing such issues with such eminent personalities coming and giving their views, don't you think that that notion of letting it be and like having a possibility that they can peacefully coexist is actually flawed, because it has not happened over, let's say, half a century? And moreover, just an adjunct to my question is that you just try to justify that let it be because we are letting it be in other states, other princely states like that of Nagaland and Hyderabad. Is it justified enough because it is happening there and hence we should let it be here also? But the fact is that major problems is accruing to that Kashmir region only. So is it justified for us to actually neglect that we should let it be on the grounds that it is happening in other states wherein there actually is peace? Thank you.
Thanks.
Before I answer your question, may I just remind Dr. Swami that the 1994 resolution which he refers to was reiterated by the Indian Parliament in 2012 also, when the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, was the Prime Minister of India. So therefore, 1994 has been succeeded by 2012. And allow me to now juxtapose it against what I had stated earlier. That look, there is a certain wish that we have. And that wish is legitimate because the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir was acceded to the Indian Union by Maharaja Hari Singh on the 26th of October 1947. But events have intervened since then. And one of the biggest events which has intervened has been the nuclearization of South Asia, which you cannot ignore. So therefore, if you want to live in your cuckoo's land and indulge in wishful thinking, please continue to be my guest. Yes, status quo can change. If there is a rebellion or if there is an upsurge in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, if the people of Gilgit, Baltistan, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the northern areas, rise up in revolt, yes, that can bring about a change in status quo. Now, whether we should be abetting that process or not is a different question which I would not like to go into. With regard to your specific query that should we allow coexistence, my counter question would be, how does Article 370 or abrogating Article 370 help in bringing the people of Jammu and Kashmir and India closer? In fact, it would really become an impediment in the entire process. And that's why I say that the discussion on Article 370 is really a non sequitur, because things in Jammu and Kashmir have actually moved much beyond that. And even with regard to Leh and Ladakh, the fact is that we have given a special status to Leh. There is a developmental council which exists, which has been given special rights to develop that area. So therefore, we have, as a country over a period of time, tried to deal with different realities in different parts of the countries by entering into specific arrangements, which we have sanctified constitutionally.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. Another question here.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Bhumika. My very simple question to the side opposition will be, I'm going to take what the second and third speaker said as premise and say that, okay, so you guys said that the article you yourself believe is sort of an empty shell and has been eroded again and again. So the first part of my question is, then why not just abrogate the given article in question, right? And second thing is, explain to me, do you actually recognize and acknowledge the problems that the proposition side has brought about that they believe that the article does in the given region, that is development vacuum as well as policy inertia and lack of interaction? Are you acknowledging that those things are a direct consequence of the given article and the abrogation will be at least a step in the right direction?
Madhuji.
To the our side.
But you both have been arguing on our side so far.
Sir, would you like to take
I would like to then, in that case, take it. See, as far as development vacuum is concerned, the primary reason for it is the very corrupt and inefficient regimes in J&K. National Conference, whenever it's been in power, has looted the state of Jammu and Kashmir and neglected development. If you don't have power, who's going to go and invest? And as I mentioned to you before, very quickly, the land laws as amended in 1975 allow any amount of land to be acquired for industry, for schools, for hospitals, even for charitable organizations. It's just that, lack of infrastructure, and secondly, political turbulence. And political turbulence is a manufactured turbulence. It's not endemic to the situation, because the very same Kashmiris who drove out the Pakistanis opted to be with India in 1947. It's because of repeated rigging and very corrupt regimes who came into power through means fair and foul and ran very authoritarian regimes that they turned against.
Thank you, Ms. Kishore. Can we just take one last question? Okay. Yeah, Ms. Kishore, can we just have Mr. Tiwari come in? We just have time for one last question for the proposition then. And Mr. Tiwari, if I could just request you to be brief. Thanks.
Well, as brief as Ms. Kishore was, to your specific question, why Article 370 cannot be abrogated? You need to read the text of Article 370, and let me read out the relevant portion to you. Article 370, paragraph 3 says, notwithstanding anything in the foregoing provisions of this article, the President may by public notification declare that this article shall cease to be operative or shall be operative only with such exceptions and modifications and from such date as he may specify, provided that the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of the state referred to in clause 2 shall be necessary before the President issues that notification. So Article 370, as it stands worded, it has become abrogation proof. So therefore, there is no way till the time you resort to an extra constitutional mechanism and say that, look, it's my way or the highway, and we have decided to repeal it, you can go ahead and do it. But if you go by the wording of Article 370 and what Mr. Jethmalani had said earlier, that there's a corresponding provision in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, and I have no reason to doubt the most eminent lawyer in this country that it cannot be done.
Okay, we have one question for Mr. Swami again.
First of all, the clause he quotes has no reference to 370, and he says, I've lost. So that is a lawyer. He can argue both sides, top and bottom, and therefore, you know why it is better not to be a lawyer and still practice law. Now, what was the question?
The mic's working, I'll just get the question. And this is going to be the last question, after which we will have a vote. There was a vote taken before the debate for how many people in the House were for and how many were against. And after the debate, we'll have another vote to see who was more persuasive The question is for Mr. Swami.
Good morning, sir. So you being member of the ruling party of our nation, don't you think your government is scared of any kind of referendum happening in Kashmir?
Yeah. Last year the government was scared of doing anything about National Herald, but this year they're not scared.
Should I take a few?
So I predict that next year 370 will go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swami. Now, we actually will be taking 2 more questions. While we take those questions, there is someone going around taking a vote. And after those 2 questions, I'll announce how many were in favor of the proposition before the debate and how many have changed their minds after. So, do we have a question for the opposition? We had one here. Yeah.
To anyone from side opposition, considering that Article 370 also brings along with it AFSPA, which also brings along a number of human rights violations, what is your stance on the resentment that it creates amongst the Kashmiri people and how it turns them against the Indian state?
Can I request Mr. Tiwari to take that?
Article 370 does not bring the Armed Forces Special Powers Act along with it. The condition precedent for invoking the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is that the state needs to be declared as a disturbed area. Tomorrow, if the government of Jammu and Kashmir, and you have a BJP-PDP government in Jammu and Kashmir now, if they do not believe that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act needs to continue, all that they need to do is revoke the disturbed area notification and the Armed Forces Special Powers Act will automatically go. It's another matter that the Indian Armed Forces will then not agree to operate in Jammu and Kashmir for the Armed Forces Special Powers Act with all its flaws provides the legal insulation for them to do it.
Thank you, sir. We have another question for the proposition.
Hi, my name is Karthik, and anyone can answer. My question relates to some of the arguments that you made throughout the latter 2 speeches. It's particularly related to practical issues like development, unemployment. A lot of the arguments were premised on the assumption that it is Article 370 that is stopping these efforts from reaching Jammu and Kashmir. But if we actually look at it, a lot of central institutions like the Election Commission, a lot of public investment projects like Mr. Modi's 70,000 crores and UPA 1's 30,000 crores, all of these projects are still reaching there. The only things that's stopping them is a ratification by the state government. So in spite of whether or not 370 is existing or not, development can reach subject to ratification by the state government. In this scenario, given that development can happen, given already the kind of skepticism that exists in the local population with regard to government intervention because of election rigging, because of a lot of their trust being taken away, isn't Article 370 remaining as a buffer to autonomy before said development takes place? An important trade-off to make.
Yeah, Dr. Swami.
Well, you see, first of all, I'll start with what Ambedkar said. He said, I'm not a traitor. I will not move this bill, this amendment seeking to introduce Article 370. Now, the essence of that is that we don't measure the integrity, sovereignty, unity, identity of India in terms of what is economically good and what is economically bad. That comes secondary. First and foremost, you must have your identity intact. And here, it is abhorrent to all Indians, that I know majority, overwhelming majority of Indians, that there should be 2 constitutions in this country. Until 1975, there were 2 prime ministers in this country, one in Kashmir and one in Delhi. And therefore, we want this unity of India process to be completed, and Article 370 being a temporary provision. On that assurance, it was passed in the Constituent Assembly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have passed at all. That must go, whether it's economically better or economically worse for the state of Kashmir. I don't believe that economics is dependent on any of these things, as the sanctions that the Americans have put on so many countries has gone completely against whatever they are intended to do. So it's not a sanction, it is not something that protects you against some invasion from India. As Jawaharlal Nehru once loosely said that it will be invaded by Marwadis in Kashmir if you don't have Article 370. It's got nothing to do with that. If at all anything has happened, it is 500,000 Kashmiri Pandits have been driven out because of Article 370, and we have not been able to do anything about it. So we want it as an emotional principle, and the economics of it we can take care of afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, could you add to that? And I'd once again request everyone to please let the vote be conducted in silence. There is too much of murmuring happen. We could just extend the courtesy of silence to our speakers.
Right.
Thanks.
So, like Mr. Swami said, we believe that it's a principled issue, but secondly, what you call a buffer, it's a matter of semantics. I call an impediment to economic development. So it's a matter of perspective on economic development to Kashmir region, right? We tell you that Article 370 acts as a regulatory roadblock to development getting there, and it creates, in terms of investors wanting to invest in that area, the greater the number of laws, any kind of apprehension that you create within investors in any market tends to make investors very, very wary of that region. They believe it's a barrier to entry, even though it might not be. So it's more a perception problem at times, and sometimes it's a real problem. So I think even if one is to believe that you want to keep it as a buffer, I think it's not as much a buffer as much as it's a roadblock to the perception that Kashmir has as a place that people want to invest in and development should go towards. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks. And I think your colleague has something to add.
A little bit of analysis to what he was saying is, for example, how the opposition kept saying, right? If you stay for 10 years, you can buy property and set up industry and so on and so forth. In the rest of India, you need to stay for 183 days in a financial year, or a cumulative of 2 years out of a total of 5 years to be able to buy property and continue and have a company, right? So the amount of private investment an individual can make to then add to the economy of Kashmir is stopped by Kashmir at the outset. So this is why the Indian government needs to pay hand over fist to make sure Kashmir is actually fiscally possible. Over and above the fact that they need to pay everybody whose family member gets killed for any militant attack, so on and so forth, right? So this stops the overall progress of Kashmir, job creation. Like if Uber can't set up over there, 500,000 drivers can't probably roam around and earn their own piecemeal and instead have to be funded by the government.
Okay, thanks. We have a question for the opposition. Yes, sir. Yeah, Mr. Jethmalani, I think this bet, you could just get some clarity on the bet between you and Dr. Swami.
Dr. Swami, as a layperson, is not a lawyer. He has the full freedom to say whatever he likes about law, which he doesn't understand anyhow. Now here is Article 147 in the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, which is passed by the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, and it came into force in 1957. It talks of the power of amendment of the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir in 147. But it adds a proviso, provided further that no bill or amendment seeking to make any change in the following will ever be moved, that the provisions of the Constitution of India as applicable in relation to the state. 370 is a provision in the Constitution of India applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, that the Constituent Assembly and Parliament of Jammu and Kashmir will not even move an amendment ever.
Thank you. I think Dr. Swami has something to say. Yeah, you could just take the mic. You don't have to get up. Just, yeah, Mr.
I will, even law students will agree. And they are already agree. Because they agreed that it can't be amended at all. But
well, since you're their teacher, they wouldn't dare.
May I just
a sec.
May I just supplement?
Sure,
may I just
sure.
supplement the corresponding provision?
Yeah, after Dr. Swami can take over.
May I just supplement? Then Dr. Swami can reply. May I just supplement the corresponding provision in Article 370 of the Constitution of India that says, notwithstanding anything in the foregoing provision of this article, the President may, by public notification, declare that this article shall cease to be operative or shall be operative only with such exceptions and modifications from such date as he may specify, provided that the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of the state referred to in Clause 2 shall be necessary before the President issues a notification. And there's a specific bar in the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution that you cannot even move an amendment to an article of the Indian Constitution which is applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. I hope the two of them clarify the situation.
First of all,
just a sec, ma'am. Dr.
First
Swami.
of all, there is nothing specific about Article 370 in that. That part, at least, is. Now it's a question of interpretation. This is not a constitutional amendment. It is a way of terminating Article 370. There is, if there is a constitutional amendment, it would be from via Article 368. So there is a question of interpretation. Mr. Jethmalani is a bad loser, and he has standards which are very difficult to understand sometimes. For instance, he's a great crusader against corruption. I am with him on that, in the black money, etc. But as soon as the corruption is established, then he will go and defend the accused in the court.
Okay, we'll just have one last question before we have the result. Let's go. We haven't taken one from this side. Let's just go.
I agree, it's a lawyer's privilege, and that's why I'm not a lawyer.
My question is to Dr. Swami. So first of all, great fan of yours. And I think you can answer every question that is bombarded to you except this. Why did Nehru go to London? Why did Jawaharlal Nehru go to London? You mentioned in your speech.
Okay.
Well, you meet me privately, I'll tell you.
Right. We have one more question here. Just identify yourself, please.
My question is for Abhishek and Siddharth. Keeping Article 370 aside, what more we can do to increase the symbiotic relationship between people of India and Indian Kashmiris?
I guess they aren't even considering that.
Yeah, as in like a bunch of things. So you've agreed that Article 370 needs to go firstly, so I'm glad that you do.
She said keeping aside. She didn't abrogate.
Yeah. Don't put words in her mouth.
She said keeping
It's a habit, debater's habit. Like I guess like that's what's been happening from that side as well. So,
okay. Yeah.
regardless, without Article 370, without talking about it, I guess the first thing that we need to do is like make Kashmir like feel like it's ours instead of being different. I think there's this entire notion of Kashmir being created as this oriental other, like, oh my God, you're a Kashmiri. I don't really think that ought to happen. In terms of the kind of perception that we have about you're from the valley and thus you ought to be different and you need to be different and you'll get different privileges is something that needs to go. How it can be done is a bunch of things. Integrate them in debates here probably. It's sad that there's not a single Kashmiri sitting here. I think it's really, really ridiculous that we're talking about it.
There is one, an assumption again, like incorrect. Okay, okay, fine. Yeah.
I would like gladly swap places, and I'm sure sir would do a much better job on either side. And that's what I mean. Integrating them like onto the mainstream, like giving them that opportunity is something that's extremely important, and that'd be great. And also recognition. I got to know at the end of the debate that sir's a Kashmiri. Maybe just understanding that and like having talked to him before this debate would have given me greater perspective about the motion. Things such as that.
I did talk to him before that, and he is in favor of abolishing Article 370.
Okay, speaking of in favor and against, I'd like to thank all the speakers for a wonderfully lively debate. I have some results here. We did conduct a poll before the debate started. The proposition being, this House will abrogate Article 370 of the Constitution of India. Before the debate, out of the 120 people present in the hall, 84 were for the proposition and 36 against. So that means 84 supported the abrogation of Article 370. After the debate, the number for the proposition increased to 91. And so I guess the younger side was more persuasive, or another one, someone else may want to say it is the side that is more easy to convince. On that, is there a vote of thanks that the students would like to extend? So I'll just hand over the mic.
Prateek Bakshi will be now hosting a vote of thanks for all the dignitaries and everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming here. It's my privilege and a great joy to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of Indian Union Debate Forum and on my own behalf, would extend a very hearty vote of thanks to everyone present here and making IUDF a huge success. I'd like to mention our deep sense of appreciation to our speakers, Mr. Ram Jethmalani, Mr. Subramanian Swamy, Mr. Manish Tiwari, Ms. Madhu Kishwar, and Mr. Siddharth Tyagarajan and Mr. Abhishek Sanskritik for sharing their opinions with us and throwing light on various aspects of the issues debated upon. We are also very much grateful to Mr. Abhinandan Sekhri for chairing this event. Also, we would like to thank our partners, Indian National Bar Association and Loctopus, and our sponsors, Mr. Navroz Sirvai and Siddharth Luthra, who extended financial support to us for conducting this event. Lastly, I would like to thank my team as well as all the volunteers without whom this debate would not have been possible. And thank you so much.
If you enjoyed that, click up here to support us and down here to subscribe. Be sure to check out our older episodes and the other stuff we do, like Can You Take It, I Agree, panel discussions, comics and animations, and much, much more.